Welcome to the Uplift, where we are uplifting our lives, uplifting each other, and uplifting our communities together. Thank you for joining myself, Cy Herrera, and Tessa Cy here, two women, two attorneys, doing it our way, and inviting you here each week to share in on the stories, advice, and life lessons we've picked up along our journeys that keep us uplifted, and that will hopefully do the very same thing for you. Now buckle in and let's get ready to be uplifted.
Hello, everyone. As always, I'm Tessa, and I am joined by the amazing, fantastic, everyone needs one in their life, Cy.
These intros, I can't. I love them so much. Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Excited to be here with all of you.
So I had this fascinating conversation with my niece and learned a lot. So we were kind of talking about the golden rule, and she was like, well, let me tell you, the golden rule has an update. I'm like, okay, this is fascinating. Tell me more. And she introduced me to the platinum rule, which goes, according to her, like this: treat everyone as they wish to be treated. And isn't that like a revolutionary generational shift from treating everyone how you think they should be treated or how you'd like to be treated to treating them like they would like to be treated? And the first thing that popped in my mind
Yes.
are those great videos that are all over the interweb of teachers asking the kids when they enter the classroom, do you want a high five? Do you want to dance? Do you want a hug? Right? And it's kind of the same thing, right? It's like
Yep.
the other person should be able to say how they want and what they want, right? Because everybody has their own trauma. Everybody has their own things. I, for one, have some germaphobe tendencies that sometimes gets in the way. And if I can avoid handshakes, I'm happy with that.
Nice. That's so good. I'm so excited to talk about it because it is a shift, right? It really is. And what's interesting as you were saying it, I was thinking about how so much of the way that people treat you may very well be about them.
Right?
Right? And
Mm-hmm.
we talk about classic, projection in so many ways, but it's like even when people are trying to be kind, they actually are limiting their perspective and having, multiple perspectives or at least being able to allow to allow yourself to see somebody else's perspective is such a powerful tool and a powerful skill to have. And I think that this is going to actually really not just encourage it, but create an environment in which it's the expectation, right? It's the expectation that you inquire, and it's the expectation that people will have, not just, the freedom, but the comfort and the ability to really articulate how they deserve to be treated. Yes.
Yes, and I love how you focused it on respect, right? Because it's like this, we're taking the respect not I think the golden rule focuses the respect on us, right? And we should
Mhm.
be respectful to others. Whereas this like makes you understand that, hey, respect is a two-way street. And what works for
Yes.
me might not work for them. I'm thinking about something as simple as like you're gonna go hang out with somebody and you want to bring coffee, but
Mm.
you happen to prefer hot coffee, even in the middle of summer. But maybe
Mhm.
they like iced coffee, right? It's
Yeah.
as simple as that, but it can be used for so many things from like which pronouns to gender identity to preference in coffee, how they want to be greeted, what name they want to be called. Like it
How they
is
wanna be
so
contacted. We talk about
yeah.
that sometimes.
Oh my God, that's such a good one.
Like, what works for you doesn't necessarily work for the rest of the world, yeah.
Right? Like and that one is so expansive between not only our personal lives but our professional lives too, right?
Mhm.
Like some
Mhm.
people are really great at email, others are really great at text, and some people
Mhm.
still want to have conversations on the phone.
Yep. Yep, yep, and I mean, and it's all valid, especially,
Oh, that.
it's even more than respect. I feel like this is getting us closer to, like, actually having care for people, like, making caring for people a common thing, because we've been so conditioned to basically take the humanity out of our interpersonal relationships, and I think that's really at the core of so many things that have gone wrong with the society. Is like we're taught, like conditioned. I think we're like, look at children, they're so incredibly usually loving and just like, wanting to engage people, and then somehow we teach them like, no, 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 fight that instinct. You don't need to care
Right.
about people, you need to care about yourself, you need to focus on yourself, all of that. It's just so interesting, to the point, I mean, to the extent where, we really have gotten into this mindset that it's all about us sometimes, and even when we're thinking about how to respect others, it's about us, right? Like in the golden rule, how would you like to be treated? This is
Hmm.
just so this is really interesting, because I think so many of us would fall on the golden rule to be like, kind of like, one of those truths, one of those big things that you hold on
Right.
to, that you just reference all the time. But I love the evolution of it. I think it's just a growth moment for it, because it recognizes that everyone is actually different, that we don't all think the same, we don't all feel the same, we don't all live in this world the same, we don't all have the same lived experience, right? And that's really what this is doing. It's helping to honor that in our
And
interactions.
I'm so excited about the kids that are like growing up with this
Mm.
concept, right? Like, not, as you point out, it's the respect, it's care, and it's that acknowledgement that everyone's different and that's okay. And if the kid doesn't want to hug Aunt Sally, the kid can say, no, I don't want to hug Aunt Sally. And I think if you grow up in this world with this platinum rule, Aunt Sally doesn't feel bad about it. Aunt Sally just realizes that's the kid's personal preference, and that's okay. It has nothing to do with me.
Right, exactly. Such a strong example that we can probably all relate to. But it's very true. And the other thing is like asking for consent, basically. Like it's
Yeah.
building in consent culture, which is such a beautiful thing. It's something that we unfortunately have been lacking, I think, up until this point. I shouldn't say I think, I know for sure. And we're even conditioned to not expect to be asked for consent too, which is such a strange, interesting thing how we've gotten here. But this really kind of, takes that on head on and says, no, we should be talking about it. We should never be assuming this thing. We should, if you're going to, live your life according to this rule, it's built in that you have to ask. You have to ask it. It requires it, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking about all the articles that we're still inundated with on return to the office, right? And I
Mm.
think about, in my head, when I read one of these articles and it says, so and so company is demanding their employees return to the office. All I can see, I see this like uh, elderly gentleman with this big white mustache
Is
who's like twirling his
it
mustache and
curly
like,
at the end?
yes. And he's like, back in my day, we all worked in
Yeah,
the office from 8
right,
to 5 p.m.
right, right, right.
And I I think that this whole idea of a platinum rule is not only for like interpersonal relationships, but it's
Mm,
also great for employers, right? On how
yeah.
you're handling your staff and who's comfortable doing what and what environment do they excel in so that everybody's getting what they want out of it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that it's important what people want. Like that's another
Oh
thing.
my God, yes. Hello.
Just the value system that's built into it is amazing too. I wish we knew exactly who like came up with this, because we should give them credit.
I
It's really pretty
know.
incredible. But it's also a matter of like, can we adapt this into our own lives in big and small ways? And yeah, interpersonal relationships, it's about just being mindful, it seems like, of this other person, and just not assuming really what people want, what they like, what they are longing for. That's another piece of language that I've recently picked up of asking people what they're longing for, like even in a conversation, like setting an intention together is so powerful to start the conversation. And especially when emotions are high, if people are coming to you upset, if they have problems, we talk about unsolicited advice, but even when people come to you, they might not be wanting your advice at all. They might just want to be listened to. They might just want to see your expression. I don't know, they might just want to have someone there with them as they're processing as an extrovert, they might just want somebody to witness, their process. I mean, there's a million things that they could be wanting and longing for. And it's interesting to me that we're kind of taught, or we even have proclivities, whether they be natural temperament or otherwise, to just do certain things. Like I know that I have a proclivity to want to like do problem solving. I'm like, oh, you came to me with a problem. Great, let's solve this problem, And what I've learned is that not everybody necessarily is seeking that. And the only way to really know, or to even, have a chance at knowing, is to ask actually and to talk about it.
Right? I feel like many times when you and I are talking, we realize that the solution is just more communication or better
Mhm.
communication. And I've
Mhm.
been trying to do the same thing in my life professionally and personally. You know, when the person comes to unload or unpack something, it's, would you like me to listen? Would you like advice? Would you like to work through this together? What can I do for you to help this situation?
I love that
And
language. Good
sometimes they don't
practical language.
know,
Yeah, they don't
right?
know
Like,
sometimes, sure. And that's
and
fair.
sometimes it can adapt in the middle,
Yep.
right? Like maybe they
Yep.
wanted just to work through it together, and then they realize, no, I just want your advice on how I should do this.
Mhm. 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 Or I've already decided on this part. I just want your limited advice, on this one little part. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
totally fair. And I'm like fascinated with, my niece telling me this because I'm like, wow, how did it take this long for me to realize that's really genius?
Well, we only know what we know. We don't know what we don't know, I guess. But I think it's really just a natural evolution, honestly. I think the reason it's so brilliant is because it actually packs in a lot of what we've learned, together, and come to really as a society, really, in a lot of ways, not the whole society, unfortunately, but
Mm,
a good segment, growing and learning in new ways and challenging ourselves and understanding that, your lived experience is not the same as somebody else's, and story sharing and really learning about other people's experiences. And I really think, the internet has had a lot to do with that. Obviously, like just being able to communicate across society has changed. And it helps. I think it helps in that way where we can see these multiplicities of perspectives and human experiences. And now that we have, you have a deeper appreciation basically for the fact that we're not the same. I mean, I don't know how this is the case, but it really seems like people would really like to pretend that everyone is the same. And, not too long ago, what was it, like the color blindness thing was prevailing. And I was just like,
mhm,
what? I don't understand, because I guess I can't understand that. But I mean, it seems like that's what people really wanted, right? They wanted it to be like, oh, everyone has the same well, there's the whole fallacy of complete individual responsibility too. So, everybody has the same opportunity, equal opportunity, all of those things that really justify our systems, those really were the prevailing kind of sentiments. And I think that's been disrupted. It's been disrupted in a major way where people can't really
mhm.
deny it now, right? Like you're seeing videos of people living an entirely different kind of life, or experiencing incredible turmoil or struggle or violence or poverty, or or riches, ridiculous riches, obscure riches, like, I mean, you're really seeing the gamut, right? Like you see it all. You see all of this, and it's like you can't really deny anymore that that you have to know that there are completely different lived experiences, and like you said, traumas, and so many different things that people are going through that, first of all, you have no idea, you just interact with people for small parts of their lives. But also that you might not be able to literally relate to. You might not have been through that, and that's okay. And the correct response is to basically ask about that, or ask about, how people want to be received or interacted with, based on the fact that we understand we're different. And so this gets right to it.
So this reminds me of something that was in the news a lot this week or the end of last week, which is Garth Brooks, the country music legend, I think it's fair to say, apparently owns a bar in Nashville, or is opening a bar in Nashville.
Mm,
And the conservatives are up in arms because Garth Brooks' bar is going to serve Bud Light. And we know that the conservatives are upset because the advertisement that was run with a trans woman has thrown them into hyperdrive.
mm,
And so they then complained about Garth Brooks' bar. And what surprised me the most this week was the response from Garth Brooks, which was this. Essentially, I've always supported inclusion, I've always supported diversity, and if you don't like it, this is not a place for you. And this is kind of
yes,
the
Garth.
opposite, right? This is sort of the opposite
Yeah.
of, but this is what he said from a business decision that I thought was really fascinating, and I think relates to this platinum rule really well as like a business owner. So his theory was, I'm going to continue to serve Bud Light because that decision to ban a product is not mine. It is the
Mm,
consumers. And if the consumers who come into my bar do not order a bunch of Bud Light, I'm just going to tell my distributor, hey, your product isn't selling. But I'm
right.
not going to make a big political statement about it. I'm just going to say, hey, nobody's buying your beer. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, what an interesting way to like change the narrative, put it
Right.
on, allow the other person to make their decisions for what they want their behavior to be, but
Yeah.
just to have this kind of neutral ground. I'm like, wow. Like, I mean, I don't get me
Interesting.
wrong. I love a business that stands up for like basic
Sure.
human dignities.
Sure.
Mm, let's go with the big ones like racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia. Have I missed any? The big ones. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I like when a business speaks up. I'm like, this is a very fascinating way of kind of like finding the middle ground and listening to somebody else. Let the consumer decide what they want to do, and if it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell. And they're like, way to go, Garth Brooks. Fascinating. You gave everybody something to take away from this
Yes,
conversation.
yes, yes, and I mean, um, I love how that he kind of used their own arguments against them too. My grandma had a funny saying about that, but I won't say it. It's just so funny how you can, take someone else's logic and use it against them. And I mean, they give you everything you need because they argue one thing one day and another the next. But I mean, in this
What?
case,
Sound like that.
in this case, I mean, businesses, obviously, like capitalism, corporate, I mean, this is literally up their alley of like, freedom and markets and all of that good jazz. And so I kind of love that he also like did a little nod to like, remember, this is what you're all about, right? so,
Yeah.
so he stuck that in there and made it comport with his values of inclusion. And so, I love so many things about that, and not the least to say that, this person basically just stood up for what they believe in, which is
Hmm.
what we all should be allowed to do. And the people who are trying to bring him down, um, I just think it's really interesting because if they were to apply the platinum rule, they wouldn't be doing this to begin with. But
All right. Which makes me wonder, how do we handle it if we apply the platinum rule and
yeah.
say we have a racist, sexist, homophobe,
Mm,
or whatever mix of those in our
mm,
midst, and we're interacting with them? I wonder how the platinum rule plays out. I mean, is it that we have to honor the racism?
mm.
I don't like that idea, but is that part of
Well,
it?
I I've seen something like this really interestingly in when in Leadership Boston when I took part of this 8-month program where they bring together leaders and they really explore the big challenges that face the city of Austin. And it was really interesting because they set these ground rules in the beginning. And one person, to some controversy, said something to the effect of like they wanted a rule that somebody would need to basically ask them before they essentially challenge them in ways. And we were like, well, that doesn't make sense because this is a space where we're trying to challenge people and things and mindsets and figure out like how we can push past like these barriers that have been here or whatever. And I thought it was just a really interesting interaction because the person, when we're talking in generalities, it's like you can imagine anything could come up, right? And so it
Oh,
was almost
yeah.
like they were trying to protect themselves in a way, and protect the conversation to maybe keep it civil or what have you, right? Because we didn't know what to expect. Um, but it also defeated the purpose, right? And that's, I think, where the bright line has to be, where it's like, yes, you want to treat people the way that they want to be treated, but it has to be within the confines of actual, like, the purpose of the conversation. So, I mean, we're just talking about conversations in this case, but if somebody said, "Well, I don't want you to ever challenge me." Well, then there's no point in us talking. Maybe maybe you're trying to solve something, right? Or maybe you're trying to help somebody evolve, and it very much involves those elements of having to challenge people or have question kind of where things are coming from, or where they adopted certain mindsets and whether or not those mindsets are serving them still. So I think it's about the right question too. So maybe you do develop some common ground. I mean, honestly, I feel like with this platinum rule, with a lot of the tough conversations that happen today, I actually think it could be really useful, because so many people, in my opinion, really, I mean, they waste a lot of time trying to convert people to something they will never ever convert to, right? And
Hmm.
and and maybe that's unfair to say. I mean, they could break through. I have no idea, but from my lived experience, I would say that your time is better spent talking to people who are at least in a place in their lives where they're somewhat open-minded, where they're somewhat ready to hear you. I always say, you can only talk to people that are ready to hear you. And you have to say things in a way that they're able to hear too. And so for me, it's a little bit of a technique and also a little bit of defining this in a way that makes sense for the conversation. So if you know that you're going into a conversation, it's going to be a tough one. Instead of saying like, oh, let's make rules where neither of us says anything to offend one another, because neither of us wants that. I think it's more important to say, hey, we're going to talk about some tough things, and there are going to be things that we disagree on. How would you prefer, that I speak with you when we are having a tough conversation like that? I just had a conversation with one of my staff members like this, where I said, last time we communicated about something, I sent a message over Teams, and I thought it was clear. And I'm like, but hearing your feedback, it seems like you were surprised actually by what came out of that, and I don't want you to be surprised. So how can I make sure that you're not surprised? It's not, guess what, we're never going to have a conversation like this again, or this is never going to happen. It's more about, how do you receive information best? How do you receive this kind of information best? And so it's not about avoiding the whole thing. It's about finding a way that actually is effective for that person to hear and to receive.
And so in many ways, it's kind of like a Garth Brooks rule, right? Like, this is what's working for me. I like diversity and inclusion. I
Hmm.
understand that you might have a different view,
Yeah.
but let's figure out how we're going to get through this. This is what my plan is. If you don't like it, these are the options for it for you so that you can continue doing what you would like to do.
Yeah. And I love the fact that, this kind of, you know, this kind of groundwork, if you will, allows for each person to be vulnerable enough to talk about and even
Hmm.
explore really their style, right? Because
Yeah.
I feel like we get so like jammed into this one type of style,
Oh, because it
especially
has to be
in,
perfect, right?
yeah, yes. And so like there's this whole prevailing culture that permeates, corporations, politics, nonprofits, businesses of all sorts, organizations of all sorts, even social groups, right? Where people think things need to be organized in this way. And there needs to be this
Mm-hmm.
kind of hierarchy. And then this is how people respond to this person, and that's how you respond to that person. And it's like all of these interactions are so preordained already. And again, it's silent. It's not like somebody explicitly tells you this is a regulation that you have to follow. They don't even do that, but yet we still fall into the same trap, right? And
Yeah.
and I'm excited for this rule because it allows for us to challenge the status quo in every setting that we find ourselves in, right? And to make it personal to each individual. And when you do that, it just gives the interaction an intrinsic value, right? Like you're showing somebody that you care enough to even ask them about their style, and they might not have ever thought about it because we're so predisposed to doing just what the this norm and the status quo is. But just taking a moment and being like, hey, how do you prefer that I contact you about this? Or what would be the best way for me to communicate this kind of news to you? Like that, just that alone, it shows that you care about somebody and you care about, their life, their workflow, the way that they receive information, the way that's convenient to them. I mean, it just shows so much, and it really sets you up for, frankly, a successful communication. You're just asking for the answers, right? And then people give them to you. It's my favorite thing.
And my trauma is about to show. I also really like the platinum rule because it not only do we make it personal about the other person, we as don't take their reaction personally. And
Mm,
so I obviously grew up in a family where everything was taken far too personally by
mm.
family members, and there was a lot of name calling. In the platinum rule, that is I think, eliminated because there is that mutual respect and kindness to the other person, so that it is not a slight on you as the listener slash participant in this situation.
Exactly. Yes. And when it actually, I'm so glad you said that because it actually preempts all of that bull. It actually preempts all
Right?
of, it's not even like, I mean, it literally preempts all of the bad things that happen when you don't ask. when you when you don't ask, what do you get? You get a bunch of assumptions, right? And
Mm-hmm.
expectations that are completely unfounded because you didn't ask.
Right.
So where are you pulling these assumptions out of, right? So you're assuming that I'm going to behave and react to you and your actions in a certain way, and vice versa. I'm expecting also the same thing. And this is where so many miscommunications live. This is where so many people start to put gaps in between them and fill them with negative thought. And
And
that
we're
is such a trap.
right. Communication breaks down,
Yes.
systems break down.
Suspicion creeps in, right? Like
Yeah.
you might think like, "Oh, my boss hasn't contacted me in 3 days. They're probably mad at me. I must have done something wrong." Or I mean, like this is where all your little like insecurities start getting activated, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I like to tell myself that I need to over communicate, and anytime that there's
Same.
a anytime that there's a communication issue, I think of it as a learning opportunity. So, this just happened yesterday where I was like, "Oh, that was not a successful communication." So at first I was like, oh, that's unfortunate. And then I thought, well, this is great. Now I get to learn and get to ask. And I should have asked before, but I didn't have the rule. So now I have the rule. And even still, it's never too late to actually ask and say, what would make sense in that kind of situation? What would make sense for you? How do you receive information? What's the best way for me to really communicate with you on this kind of thing? And it really just sets you up for success so that you don't have to have all these little gaps between you, so that you don't have to guess. I mean, who likes to guess when you could just have the answer, right?
It's reminding me now of this quote from Judith Martin. I think that's Miss Manner's name. And she said, etiquette and decorum is a sensitivity to others. So,
Mm,
like, this is reminding me of that, right? Like, we are choosing
yes,
to be sensitive to the needs of
yes,
other people and asking what they need. And at the same time, when we do that, depersonalizing it from ourselves so that we don't
Mm.
take the responses personally. And then everybody's winning. And I'm like, this platinum rule has like diamonds and rubies and emeralds and sapphires all attached to it because it just gets better and better as we talk
It's a
about it.
crown. It's a platinum
It
crown.
is.
I love it.
And we all need a crown.
Heck yeah, and we all have one.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm really excited to, put this into action, and I wonder how we can incorporate it into our daily lives. Like I'm trying to think of all the possibilities because, I've been thinking about it in the context of work as I often do first. And it's also one of those things where on a personal level, it's a beautiful thing, right? It's even probably more impactful because communication, I think is not easy. First of all, I just want to recognize that.
Yeah.
I feel like so many people struggle with communication, and in every part of their lives, like in their personal lives, especially, and also in their professional lives, and even in their self talk. Right? Like all of that communication is so important because it ties into the way that we think and the way that we form our thoughts and the way that we input our thoughts into a logic model, right? Like all of that narrative, even the narrative of your past, right? It colors like how you perceive the experiences that you've gone through, whether or not they were traumatic or whether or not they were good or bad. I mean, literally all of that is narrative and communication. And so it's so key, and yet people don't often really give you practical, upfront, nuanced discussions or instructions about how to do it. You're just supposed to figure it out. You're supposed to figure it out from the very many cues that happen throughout your life, and people kind of nudge you, in this way or that way, or they use certain language that you usually adopt and you internalize sometimes. And so having something like this that we can not just use, but I think pass along, right? I think that we need to like make this a thing that we tell somebody else. So like if nothing else, take the platinum rule and share it with somebody just so that it comes to their mind next time they have an interaction with someone.
I was thinking about I think our first challenge that we gave ourselves and our listeners, responding to the question, how are you? With
Mm,
a snippet of more information than just fine, good, thank you.
yeah.
I'm now wondering, could the platinum rule apply to asking people how they are? But you can tell me quickly. If you want to talk about something, you can mention it. However, you want to answer that question, I am here and open to it. Or if you're in a rush, hey, how are you? I don't have much time to talk through anything, but I am concerned about how you are.
Mm, I love that. Yeah, and then that gives people permission, right? It get like anytime you do
Yeah.
something and expose somebody to a new way of speaking, right, of communicating, it gives people permission to do the same thing, right? It gives them permission, like just being vulnerable, for example, right, in the workplace, especially. It's or even in personal relationships. It's like when you do it, people are like, "Oh, you can do that. Oh, I could do that." Like it just becomes like, "Oh, that's what we do." It's a safe thing to do in this space, in this interaction with this person. And so just setting an example like that is really powerful. I like that.
I was also thinking, like, say you're in a checkout line at the grocery, the cashier says, how are you? And your response is, I'm really mad at my spouse, parent, friend, cat, dog, whomever it may be. And your answer to their, how are you? I'm really annoyed with my, say, dog. And I don't want to waste your time with a bunch of details, but thank you for letting me say that because it helped me just getting it out there into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember there was one person, I can't remember if it was that same doctor, but if you asked her like, how are you? She would say, do you really want to know or do you just want? And so she was kind of asking for permission in that, like checking in. Do you really want to know how I feel or do you want, just a nice greeting? And I always thought that was kind of funny, but it was really real. It's a real thing. It's like how much do people really are they being polite? Do they want a like nice little pleasantry? Are they truly concerned? Do they want to hear about it? And Yeah, I really like that idea of kind of just asking and just checking in with people about what kind of interaction are you seeking now?
I know sometimes with a childhood friend of mine, when she calls and she'll ask how I am, I'm like, my response is, "Are you in a safe place where I can answer that? Or
Mm,
are you, grocery shopping?" And I know that my answer is, I'm fine, great,
yeah.
as opposed to going through, personal details in a public space with her, which might make her
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
And that's really nice too, because then people start being more thoughtful about what they're prompting you for too, right? Because then they're thinking
Hmm.
beforehand next time, like, I'm at home. I want like even setting your attention at the beginning of a call. I kind of love that as well. Because, there's some people every time I talk to them, I really want to talk to them for hours, but sometimes I can't. And I take their call because I love them so much and I want to hear their voice. But sometimes I answer the call and I say, say hello. I'm so happy you called. I wish, we had lots of time to talk together right now. But I only have a few minutes, but I hope that we can talk again later tonight or whatever. And just let people know from the beginning, where you're at in that time and kind of what kind of conversation you're able to have at that moment. I feel like that really helps manage expectations so that people don't even like start to get invested in this big conversation that's not going to happen, that you're going to have to cut them off. Like, that's my least favorite thing where I'm like, oh man, like I'm in this conversation and I really have to go and I don't want to cut it off. And so, managing expectations is actually for yourself and for others, and setting an intention it's like it's what's that saying that's like an ounce of prevention's worth a pound in treatment. It's kind of that idea, like if you say it
Hmm.
all up front, it changes everything. Because now everyone's on the same page, everyone knows what to expect, and everyone can take this, this moment and appreciate it for what it is and not what we wish it was.
Wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, I'm thinking of from everything from like a phone call with your mother to
Mm,
start of a business meeting, right? To like
yes,
understand the rules of the game before you
yes,
start. I mean,
yes,
life changing, right? Like,
yes.
I feel like the platinum rule will actually, if you're following it, limit like daily frustrations.
Oh my gosh, yeah. What if we did all of meetings? Well, I mean, obviously some of them are maybe too big for this, but especially a meeting with like just a few people. w- How wonderful would it be just to go around and be like, what is everybody seeking from this meeting? Just just
Hmm.
ask an open question and see what you get. It would be really fascinating because for the most part, we're probably assuming. I mean, sometimes we put a topic for a meeting or what have you. People have a general understanding of what we're going to talk about. But how much time do you have for this meeting? Are you feeling well enough to still commit to this whole hour? And, what are you seeking? What are you trying to get out of this meeting? I love when people do that. I need to do that more.
Yeah. And yeah, I love when a meeting starts with, okay, everybody say what's on your mind. Let's go around the
Mm,
room. And it could be, my dog's not eating, to I feel like I don't have enough time on this deadline, to whatever is top of mind. But I think just airing those really like removes those barriers and walls that we put up because that's what's been consuming us and allows us to participate in a much like cleaner headspace.
yeah. And then it even made me think about like, I don't know why, but just that personal thing. You could ask people to share that personal thing, or you could just ask them, especially for like a long day. We've been doing these like, retreats or like day long or half day long meetings for strategic planning. And even just saying, write out one or two things that are just, on your mind right now that are not related to this, that are filling up your mind. And just write them down just so you can see them. And I feel like just that is therapeutic to be able to
Yeah.
recognize it and acknowledge it and be like, okay, I see that and I know that. And I choose, to continue with the task at hand, understanding that that is something that is weighing on my heart or what have you. And, I think most of the most of the issues that kind of bubble up for us, stem from the fact that we're not acknowledging them in a way, right? Like they're just kind of eating
Mm-hmm.
away at us, and it's like we wish that we were somewhere else in this moment, but we're not. And so we feel all this tension and really like just knowing it and then maybe even releasing it to the fact that like, okay, I see this thing that I've been thinking about or that's been weighing on me, and I know that I'll be able to address it tomorrow. And just like having that little bitty baby conversation with yourself and knowing that you can, you can be safe in using this space and time for this other thing, that that can kind of change your entire attitude. That can change your entire, I wanna say, like, your aura, your, like, anxiety level, you know what I mean? Like, your presence.
Yeah.
It changes whether or not you're present in this moment.
And that, in my opinion, impacts everybody around you, right? Like,
Yes,
I think
yes.
people feed off of each other. And I think when everybody is present, like you've carved out an hour for a meeting, but when everybody's present, you might be able to get through it in 20 minutes.
Yep, absolutely. When everybody is sharp, focused, intentional, absolutely. So, maybe just setting intention in the beginning with everyone versus just your intention is important. I feel like in meetings, I'm often the person who is like, this is what we're doing in this meeting. This is why we're here, and I like to set an intention just to get everyone on the same page because you'd be surprised how many meetings happen where people don't do that. They just kind of get together, people know that they're supposed to talk about something generally, but they don't really have, direction, an outline, kind of like a specific path that they want to at least venture out on. But yeah, I'm really excited to see how I might be able to incorporate this into a more, collaborative thing. And one of the things that I read that I really liked, that I mentioned before, was a leader who said that they like to speak last, which is not my strong suit, but I like to think about how maybe I could, marry those two things where I could speak last by just, starting off the conversation as let's go around and speak about each of our intention for this meeting, for this time together, what have you. And then maybe speak last to my intention. But it's actually really important and it's really powerful to think about intention and why are you even meeting. There's so many jokes about offices where people just meet in perpetuity and I live for that, but and it's true, right? Like
It's
I've
so true.
it's so true. And so I've had meetings where like I've had to really like reflect on the intention of meetings, right? Like and I mean, they're of my own doing a lot of times, like putting everyone together and being like, this should get us something good. And then, just going on and on, people just kind of randomly bringing things to the surface. And, we have lovely conversations, but what is the intention? And being able to even just step back and really reflect on what would be the purpose of us meeting, right? Like, what are we trying to get out of it? What are we seeking from coming together? And that's really honoring people's time, honoring their
Yeah.
energy, honoring, their expertise. Like, you're really honoring people when you bring them together with very clear and very purposeful intention.
Being somebody who works in politics, I've been in many a meeting that is only occurring because the person who called the meeting wants a stage. And that is just
Mm,
shocking that political types might like the stage, might like to, perform for people. But
mm,
it is true. And it
that makes
is,
sense.
yeah, but it is taxing on everyone, right? It's like,
Hmm.
and it is definitely not part of the platinum rule because that performative person really is not interested in what anyone else thinks or cares. But imagine a world where like the platinum rule slowly like becomes accustomed to our personal interactions and then our business interactions. And then just maybe someday our politicians might also think about
Mm.
it. Like I like the idea
Ooh,
of this kind of snowball effect where, we
yes.
could have a little change to some more change to societal change.
I love that, and it really I mean, society is the most interesting thing to me because how do we decide on things? Like, how do we even get to this place where we have structured our society in certain ways? And what you just said inspires me some because it makes me believe that our personal interactions, our one-on-one interactions, our small group interactions that lead to community interactions, like all of that I can see it. I can see how that actually would, for lack of a better term, trickle up or trickle through or, weave its way through society to where, it takes hold at every kind of level of our society and it's contagious in a way, in a good way. And so I love the idea of like spreading healthy relationship habits at the ground level and seeing how, that seed might grow.
I do, and I have faith from the like data researchers after this week. There was a study published by the University of Essex in the UK that said if we consume a lot of negative news and that is affecting
Mm,
our mood and our attitudes, but that can be totally changed by watching positive news and hearing about positive interactions in society
mm,
and between businesses and people.
mm.
But they put a caveat that said amusing, so, like, the funny dog video might make you laugh, but it's not going to, like, fundamentally
Mm,
change your mood, whereas
mm,
consuming news about, say, a corporation that is a shipping magnet that is now also running their cargo ships with nets to that only filters out tiny microplastics and doesn't harm the environment. I mean,
mm.
clearly a pipe dream, but a great one if it could happen.
And why couldn't it, That's
Right?
I
Hello,
mean,
anybody listening who understands
yes,
the
why
ocean.
not?
Here is your idea.
Yeah. But also, even attitudes, right? Like even
Yeah.
choosing optimism over pessimism, even choosing, humanity over, just being, despondent about everything. Like just choosing, to have faith in other people it's contagious in ways. I really do believe that, and I do and I believe it because I see it. I see that people are really attracted to other people who want to be, who want to be happy, who are seeking positivity, who are I mean, they because they want that too. Who wants to be unhappy, right? Nobody wants to be
Right?
sad and depressed.
I hope
And
not. I mean,
but it's just like we talked about, showing the way is so important because so many times when people are completely, just overwhelmed with negativity, that there's a lot of negativity in the world. It's
yeah.
easy to choose negativity, right? It's easy to choose despair. It's easy to choose um, to believe that this is all that there is, especially because, frankly, when you were talking about the news, it's not easy to just find, good news counterparts, right? It's
Oh,
not
it's not.
easy. It's
Mm-mm.
it's there, it's out there, like, there are people doing the work, they're out there trying to show that there is good in humanity, but, unfortunately, as we've discussed before, I think, the bad news sells for whatever reason. It gets people's
Yep.
attention. It's fear-based, right? And so and again, with the capitalist society, that's what we find important, not mental health clearly, which is tragic, right?
It's
And
horrible.
so yeah, so I say, you have to get to a place where you're seeking it out. You really have to seek it out because it's not going to be something that is just delivered to you passively, unfortunately. I wish we could get to that place. I I I hope that we strive to get to that day where, this is the norm. Positivity
Oh,
is the norm, right? Uplift
yeah.
is the norm. Like bringing each other and building each other up is the norm. Like that is what we should be striving to do all day, every day. But in our society now, it feels like it's not that easy. You have to do a little work to seek it out but just showing people that you care about them, even in the smallest ways of just asking how they, how they like to be, interacted with, spoken to, engaged, right? Even that, how do people like to be celebrated? Actually, that just came to my mind, and I'm thinking I'm going to use that immediately because we've just been trying to figure out like how do we celebrate people? How do we, really how do we make um days special? How do we make anniversaries special? How do we make wins special, right? Like how do we celebrate those things? And instead of guessing, we could just ask, I think, from this
Right? Because like
conversation.
some of your coworkers or some of our partners might like to
Yeah.
be put in center stage and be, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
applauded. And
Yeah.
some of our partners and spouses and coworkers might be like, mm, just tell me I did a good job. That's great. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. And for some people, like somebody's, praise is another person's just pure embarrassment. Like, I mean, that it's not a good thing for them, right? So again, like this rule applies to so many things. I'm so glad that we
Hmm.
talked about it. I'm going to really challenge myself to use almost like this lens of this rule, honestly, because it really applies to so much. And I think if we all did this, we could make a difference even in one of the things that dawns on me too is that people don't realize how powerful they are. They just period. They just hard stop. They don't realize how powerful they are. They don't realize that, whatever you do in your life impacts the people that you touch in your life, right? If you have family
Yeah.
members, you change them. You literally change them with your attitude, with your perspective on life, with your lived experience, with your love and communication, like styles, like all of that literally changes people. You exude something, right? You put it out into the space around you and through your relationships. And so if you have family, that's true. If you interact with people who you consider friends, then that's true. You have power. If you interact with people, as acquaintances, as neighbors, as community members, that's powerful. If you are in a workplace and you choose, optimism and humanity and care, that is powerful. That's a powerful thing. And so we all need to, I would say, really recognize that and take it seriously in regards to
I
how we are going to put ourselves into the world.
I completely agree. And for all of those people who are alone or believe they're alone, your
Hmm.
actions matter too. Just how do you take the trash out? Like,
Yep.
do you just throw the bag or do you wheel the cart down or do you put it in your dumpster? And you're not that person who just like, well, from my days of apartment living, I remember some people just like dumping the bag upside down and then just like discarding the bag. I think it was for spite. I'm not sure. Maybe they were just having a bad day. But every little action impacts somebody else, and we don't
Yeah.
think about it.
Right. Right. Exactly that. And I mean, you can choose to have more impact any day of the week.
Yeah,
You know, it always
absolutely.
boggles me when people say like they're bored. I'm like, you're bored. I'm like, what? There's a whole world out here just waiting for you, Like, you think people don't need you? Like, let me go get a list of volunteer calls right now for you. I mean, there's just so
Mhm.
much you can give in the world, and there's so much that you can even give to yourself. For people who are alone, I mean, literally the way you choose to talk to yourself and see the world is the most powerful thing I think anyone can actually do for their lives, to change their lives, or to, have the life that you deserve. I mean, that is something that we all have to really, grapple with, but recognize it's within our power. It's within our power to change.
Absolutely. And, I don't want to delve too much since we're winding down on time, but it made me realize that platinum also applies to ourselves, right? Like we have
Mhm.
how we think we should be reacting in society and how we
Mm,
actually want to react in society. So maybe listen to the other side that you're not showing the world
mm.
and indulge it a little bit, right? Like
Yes.
give it some space and be vulnerable about it and say you want these things and accept that and lead from that. Because I think what you'll find that it can be your power and it can be the way to bring the positive light that you want into your life.
Well said. Well said. It reminds me of discussion we've had about, really reflecting and listening to yourself, which is not easy. I just want to
It's not.
recognize it's just not easy. Like we think that we're hearing ourselves sometimes, and really we're hearing, the narratives from like our grandparents and our parents and like all of these
Hmm.
narratives about ourselves, even all these scripts that we've consigned to follow without even, without informed consent, mind you.
Exactly what I was thinking. Yes. Like,
We've
who made
signed
up
up
these
for
rules for
something,
us?
yeah, right, but we I mean, we are following them to a T, right? And unless we really separate, you have to make some space between you and really kind of like the scripts running in your head, and and really kind of force yourself into this opportunity to, sit with yourself quietly and truly reflect, and it has to be, in my mind or my experience, really it seems like it has to be a practice, because you're not an expert the first time you do it. And
Yeah, and
so
give yourself permission to do it. I feel like a
yes,
lot of us
yes,
hold ourselves back
yes,
because we haven't given ourselves permission to do the introspection, to do any
right,
self-care,
right.
because we think of all these other pressures that are on us. But
And
give
it can
yourself
be
permission.
anything, right? That's the other thing, is like, whatever works for you might not work for me. Whatever works
Yeah.
for Oprah doesn't necessarily apply to my life, right? Like, or maybe it does. And the other thing is, you won't know what works for you until you really try it. I had my first session with a new therapist yesterday, and it was really interesting. A lot of interesting feelings that came up for me. None, not the small of least, which I really question, like, should I even be taking one of these therapy spots? Like, there's so much
Oh,
need, but these are the thoughts that go through people's heads, right? And so I want to
yeah.
acknowledge it, and even though that came up for me, I, had to affirm myself and say, I deserve this too. And this is a good thing for my health. And I just find it so interesting that people count themselves out for so many things before they even try. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty. That's why I'm trying to acknowledge it for everyone listening, because I'm sure, we've all had those thoughts of like, I don't know, I don't need a spa day, or like that's just extravagant, right? Or I don't need to, I don't know, even, stop working for 20 minutes in the day because a walk would be really good for my mind and my body. Like, that's literally something that I've had in my life where I'm like, I know I want to do that. I want to have a little walk. I think it will be really good for me. And I just choose not to, and I really think it's because, there's a lot of more prevailing thoughts that say, keep working. This is more
Yep.
important, right? And you're
Yep.
literally saying this is more important than your health. That's what you're actually saying, right? But nobody challenges you about that, really. I mean, I think we're getting a little bit better talking about it, but I wanted to bring it up, just in case somebody needed to hear that today, to let them know that, you are worthy. You're worthy of time for your health and your well-being, and you're worthy of, stopping service to other people and other things, uh, even if it's just briefly, or even if it's a dedicated amount of time every week or every month or whatever serves you. But know that you're worthy.
And it makes me think, as we're winding down, when you give other people grace and you're giving them the
Mm,
respect to know how they want to respond, give yourself that same amount of respect that you give others. And
yes.
I know I tend to overextend my respect and grace for others and am much harsher on myself, which I think is pretty
Mm,
common.
yep.
And
So common.
but let's all for all of us overachievers who tend to be very hard on ourselves, apply the platter rule to yourself too, and give yourself
Mm,
some grace and some time to be vulnerable. I know it's not going to be perfect, but let's also consider treating ourselves as the other person and making sure we're getting what we need to.
yes. Yes. How do we want to be heard? How do we want to be
Yes,
treated? How do we
yes,
want to fill our cup? How
yes,
do we really serve our inner child?
yes.
How do we serve
how
our
do we want to be
wellness?
loved? How do
How
we
do we
want to
want to be
love others?
loved? Yes, yes.
All of it. Yeah.
How do we want to meaningfully spend the time that we have on this earth? Like,
Yes.
how do we actually want to spend this time, right? Like, ask yourself these questions because when you don't ask these questions, somebody tells you.
Yeah.
The world tells you what you're gonna do, whether or not you decided it or not oftentimes. I don't know how that happens. It's a strange phenomenon, but that is what happens when you don't give yourself the room to be thoughtful and intentional about it for yourself. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for us to talk to ourselves.
I am too. I'm excited for us to talk to ourselves and for others. And like, what a
Yes.
great world we're going to start creating. See, this is like episode 2 of How We Take Over the World by uplifting others and ourselves.
Yes. Our full agenda to follow.
Yes. I'm going to smile evilly now and rub my hands together and be like, oh, creating this world of good.
I love it, and I love this whole community for being a part of the full world takeover agenda. And thank
Oh,
you, Tessa, for another amazing conversation. I feel so good.
thank you, Cy. Thank you all for listening. We hope that you too find a way to find some good and make the world a better place because I know that we can make the world a better place.
Till next time, stay uplifted.